Welcome to Taking Stock. I'm Amanda Lang. Coming up on the show, a special look at tourism in Canada, including the economic value of the sector and how to grow it, and a model for community-based tourism innovation. Plus, the service industries that depend on travelers. That's all ahead. But first, a look at the value of travel and tourism to the Canadian economy by the numbers. In 2024, tourism accounted for 1.77% of Canada's GDP and employed 704,000 people, or 3.4% of the workforce. Tourism revenue was $129.6 billion in 2024, according to StatsCan, up 4% from the year prior and 123% of 2019 levels. Of that, the majority was domestic tourists at $98.4 billion. Compared to $31.2 billion from international travelers coming to Canada, with the strongest rebound happening at home. Domestic travel is 129% of 2019 levels, while international travel is 109%. Ontario attracted the largest number of international visitors at 47%, followed by BC at 28%, Quebec at 14%, and the other provinces combined share the remaining 11%. The strength or weakness of the Canadian dollar has an impact on international tourism. When the loonie is weak, international visits rise, and the opposite is also true. Not surprisingly, Americans make up almost 78% of the international visits to Canada, but account for only half of the foreign spending as non-Americans make longer trips. After a bumpy recovery from the pandemic slump in tourism, 2025 is expected to be a year of opportunity for the sector. That's if tariff uncertainty doesn't spur recessions globally. Despite its importance to the Canadian economy, the tourism sector can feel a little neglected, but there is real value in investing in it. Carine Bergevin-Chammah is an economist with BDC. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we just sort of run through the many different parts of this sector. There are many businesses that can consider themselves part of the tourism sector. I wanted to start high level, whether we treat it as a sector that deserves our investment and attention.
There's a lot of study around what's going on in the tourism sector, and it's definitely something that's attracted a lot of attention from different experts, including us at BDC. There's a lot of SMEs that work in the tourism industry, and we try to understand the sector a bit better to be able to serve these businesses better, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely saw, obviously, an impact from the pandemic hurting tourism globally, also true here. We've seen a rebound, Carine, but are we back to full health? How would you describe the overall health of this sector?
So the last data point that we have dates from the last quarter of 2024. So this is data around the GDP generated by the tourism sector. And what we see is that it's been going up quite a lot since the pandemic. It's not quite yet to where it was in 2019, but it's really circling in on that level.
We, of course, also saw many of the workers in this sector very hurt because, of course, they were frontline workers, but they couldn't be at their jobs. Tourism shut down. In terms of the employment, it is a huge employer across the country. As it grows, do we expect the jobs to go with it? Or is this one of those sectors where we might see some of the jobs never really return as people find other ways to do things?
So, of course, the businesses that are working in that sector, they rely a lot on their workforce to provide those services. So jobs usually tend to go with it. So we could expect jobs to increase as the sector increases, for sure.
We definitely see that domestic tourism is the heart of the Canadian tourism industry. Does that suggest there's a great opportunity in trying to attract more of that international traveler dollar?
So for sure, any dollar counts here. What we see is that foreigners account for a significant share of dollars that are spent in the industry, but we can't ignore as well that Canadians are part of the clientele as well. Actually, Canadians form a large part of the demand for tourism and for the tourism industry, and so both are really important in the equation.
And of course, BDC is in the business of investing in businesses, helping people start and grow businesses. Is this one where there's a lot of entrepreneurship? Do we see small businesses starting up catering to this tourism and travel sector?
In fact, yeah, the industry is one hosting a lot of SMEs in there. There's as you see when you look at the different industries that are part of this, you see accommodation, food and beverages, services. So those are all the restaurants. So a lot of entrepreneurs are participating in this industry.
And do we see growth there? Is this something that BDC will focus on?
So for the growth in terms of number of businesses, it's not something I have in front of me. Mm-hmm. I would have to take a closer look at it for sure. But if we look in terms not necessarily of just number of businesses, but the GDP and number of employment, as I said, since the pandemic, we've seen a great surge in those numbers.
Are we optimistic about the sector for 2025? Do we expect growth this year?
So we're taking a cautious optimism. So we're seeing with the dollar, the Canadian dollar that's lost a bit of value, it should incentivize foreign tourists to come to Canada and spend more dollars here, since it becomes cheaper for them to travel here. And on the flip side, you should also expect Canadians to limit their travel abroad and travel a bit more within Canada.
So good to have you with us, Carine. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Carine Bergevin-Chammah is an economist with BDC. Coming up, a unique model for creating a destination hub. Stay with us. Welcome back. One of the most sought-after destinations in Canada by global travelers is Fogo Island Inn on the North Shore of Newfoundland. The inn is a social enterprise designed from the start to revitalize its community. Zita Cobb is the founder of the Fogo Island Inn and CEO of Shorefast. Zita, thanks for being with us.
Amanda, thank you.
So Fogo, of course, is famous because it's amazing and it has become a success. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was also to talk about what it represents and what the model is that could be used elsewhere in other communities. So what's the vision that made you, first of all, make it a social enterprise, and what that means for the community?
Well, I think it means a lot, because the inn itself has become an anchor for culture and for an economy that's built around care, craft, and culture. Of course, it's owned by the community through the structure that we have, which is through an organization called Shorefast, which is a registered charity focused on the well-being of the island. I think when we started, which was 18 years ago, we started with intent and investment to think about how do we hold on to our place? How do we build an economy that underpins it? How do we develop markets that are global markets? And how do we take our assets, which are many, and make them into products that can underpin our lives in this place?
When we think about perhaps exporting this very model, where else might it work? What are do you have examples in mind of communities or assets that you would say this is the right place where you could take a model like this and really exploit it?
I think, why do people travel? They travel for nature and culture. I mean, the culture part, we're nosy about each other. We're nosy about how other people live. And clearly, we have a surplus of nature and culture. And so we have communities that, I mean, we have great cities, let's not get me wrong, but we are 4,434 incorporated communities in our country. And maybe not all of them have a dream to, have tourism as an important part of their economy, but many do. And I don't think I've been in any province that I don't see assets that are adaptable with a small amount of investment. Well, sometimes it's a big amount of investment into products that can become tourism assets. And we should never forget that trade follows tourism. And at this moment, our tourism sector is only 2% of our GDP. It's still bigger than mining and forestry and agriculture and automotive, but the OECD countries, it's 4%. So I think we could set a target to get to 5%. And that would make a meaningful difference, not just to the GDP, but it would make a meaningful difference to the connective tissue of the country. Because really, since we built the railroad, what other connective tissue have we built?
Right.
And I think this is a way, now if you think about tourism investment, we have to do it in a way that the investment is development. And that means think about the sector. What does it mean to compete? What does it mean to build markets and be successful? And then the development part is about people and places. And how do we do that? And you start with your assets. What do we love? What do we have? What do we miss? What can we do about it? And through that process, you're kind of strengthening culture, you're strengthening identity, you're strengthening attachment to place. There are three things we'd have to do. We have to take our assets, turn them into products that people can visit and enjoy.
Yeah.
We have to create access. And I think that's one of the weakest point of our Canadian economy right now, certainly our tourism economy, and not just that. We have very poor regional air access. So people have to be able to get to our country and move around in it. And then the third one, of course, is the world needs to know we're here and that there are places to come here besides the Fogo Island Inn. I mean, there are already places. We just need to make more.
We don't have a ton of time left, Zita, but on that access point, you really did manage to make some difference in Newfoundland, partly because of your connections and maybe because it's a smaller place. But could we create more of a network effect where the problems you solved there, we could do better with maybe it's a national agency that could look at every kind of tourist community and solve those issues?
The zone of opportunity for tourism, certainly, and for almost anything that involves investment and development, is the place where the circle that is government and the circle that is markets and the circle that is communities come together. That's the zone of opportunity, because we're not going to solve air access, by yelling at airlines. Right. And we're not going to solve it. Any one of those pillars or any one of these circles can't solve it alone, but we can solve it together. That is the opportunity of Canada.
Zita, so good to have you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Zita Cobb is the founder of the Fogo Island Inn and the CEO of Shorefast. Economic uncertainty can be hard on hotels, but of course also creates opportunity for Canadian brands with distinctive offerings. Beth McMahon is President and CEO of the Hotel Association of Canada. Beth, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Amanda. Great to be here.
So like every other sector at the moment, it feels a little bit like there's a reason for optimism, but also a lot of uncertainty. Overall, how are hotels in Canada faring? Are we fully recovered from the pandemic? And of course, now we're into a new uncertainty. But how does it feel out there?
It's feeling cautiously optimistic. I think we've seen a lot of growth, especially over the last year. And now, there's some mixed signals that are happening. I actually happen to be in Winnipeg currently at Rendezvous Canada, which is Canada's largest travel trade show. And so I've been on the floor hearing from international travel buyers of Canadian product and those sellers from across the country. And yeah, I think a lot of optimism for the summer months, but still, some cautionary notes about what, lies further ahead.
It feels like a moment, and maybe this is the kind of subject that would come up at a conference like that, where brand Canada should really be the thing we lean into, even more than usual. Is that a topic of conversation? Are folks in the industry really kind of thinking about how to get the message of what Canada is to the world right now?
100%. So Destination Canada, which is our crown corporation that has a mandate to promote kind of Canadian travel and tourism internationally, they are the centerpiece of this show. And they've just launched a brand new brand called Canada Naturally. It just launched today, so it's all over at least my social media feeds. But it is really, it's absolutely core to everything that kind of goes out in terms of media lines, marketing strategies.
Where are we seeing the different kind of categories doing? I mean, we know luxury held up unusually well through and post-pandemic. How are the different brand categories faring as you look down the road?
Yeah, you know what? It's mixed. I would say, obviously, in Canada right now, we're so appreciative for our domestic market. There is some softening over the last few months. I think just given the uncertainty, we saw some declines in some of our key international markets, even from the U.S. And so the nationalistic pride that we're seeing across the country, the Carney government has announced that there's going to be the Canada Strong Pass for the summer months. I am hearing, that all all segments are doing well. In fact, I just met with somebody who's promoting Ontario parks, and they said they couldn't believe like the international interest even in campsites. So across all the segments, there's good news. There's also, I would say, a hesitancy to invest longer term until there's more stability. So that's some of the things that we're talking about with our members. How do we incent greater investment into travel and tourism and into new hotels, because we know that it's needed?
You know, obviously, this is such a big, diverse country that there are some places for whom the tourism season is really in the winter. But for most of Canada, is the summertime the stretch when this is the bread and butter of attracting international travelers?
100%. This is absolutely peak time. A lot of the people that I've been talking to, said, come September, we'll let you know how things really are with those forward bookings. Part of the strategy, and so on Tuesday, which is really great here, there's something called the Inside Track, and they take us through each one of Canada's key, export markets, because travel tourism really is an export market for Canada. We are the second largest service export for the country, which is really impressive. And I think some people might not realize the value there. And so when we start to segment those markets, there are certain markets that absolutely want to come to Canada in the fall, like the Asian Pacific. They are really interested in, kind of the changing of the leaves. Australians are very interested in winter months, experiencing snow and skiing. And so there are some markets that we have, further opportunity to develop and bring into the country.
Beth, so good to have you for this. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Great to be here.
Beth McMahon, President and CEO of the Hotel Association of Canada. Coming up, food service is a huge part of Canada's economy and can be a massive draw for tourists. Stay with us. Welcome back. Restaurants in Canada benefit enormously from travelers, both domestic and international, but can they also adapt to changing preferences and a more cost-conscious patron? Kelly Higginson is president of Restaurants Canada. Thanks for being with us, Kelly.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the importance of that tourism sector to restaurants. What does it represent to most restaurants?
Well, it's going to be different across the country. So we've got heavy tourism markets that I think we can all think about, the usual Banff and Whistler's, and Atlantic Canada certainly sees a big boom. So, but food and beverage is 32% of tourism jobs, and from the international visitors, we represent almost half of the spend. So that gives you a little bit perspective from a national idea there.
Which suggests to me that that restaurants are a big part of the draw. How do we make sure that we're showcasing properly the quality of food, the variety of food? Because, of course, seems to be one reason why people want to come.
Absolutely. It is a big part of what we do. And I think we're going to see a big opportunity here with this current tariff and trade war situation. It represents an $8.8 billion potential gain for the industry, but we are cautiously optimistic. We have seen, tourists in Canada are changing their plans and looking at staying in Canada to experience more of maybe their local environment because of Canadians struggling with affordability, because of the challenges down south. Will that translate into more restaurant spending? It's still a bit of a question mark at the end of the day. Canadians typically spend more per trip when traveling internationally than when they travel domestically. But tourism and restaurants are definitely gearing up for a very hopeful summer ahead. Another area that we are going to be challenged with is some of the changes with immigration levels in these rural and tourism markets. That will impact the level of service that we're able to give. So that's another challenge that we're hoping to be able to overcome, but it's going to impact the level of service, the amount of hours that we're able to be open. So it is going to still be one of those question marks as we head into the summer.
That's a big piece of this industry. The jobs in the sector so so important. Obviously, having enough people, we've saw shortages of that as we came through and out of pandemic. Where does it stand now? And how important is it to make sure those jobs are quality jobs? On the one hand, you want restaurants to be able to afford to make money. So you worry about paying too much. But on the other hand, you need the service sector to be high quality employers.
Absolutely. Thanks. That's a great question. So we're still just over 70,000 job openings across the country right now in our industry. And where we are seeing those is primarily in the more rural or less urban, anyways, in less larger urban centers, and definitely in the tourism areas. And I'm talking about some areas in northern BC where the average population in the off season is 3,000 to 5,000 people. And when tourism season starts, it booms up to over 40,000. So how do you ramp up for that? Well, you're going to need to bring in some help for that. And whether that's domestic talent, whether that's international talent, but you're going to have to bring people in for that. And some of the changes that we've seen currently with immigration policy is going to dramatically impact those areas. And again, the level of the tourism experience is going to be impacted. We definitely are looking at more of those skilled trades is where we are feeling the pinch. So those skilled cooks that we would bring in typically internationally, some of those skilled sommeliers and those pieces are where we're really feeling the pinch, and we really need to see some investment from the government and some commitment from the immigration policies.
Thank you so much for being with us, Kelly. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Kelly Higginson, President of Restaurants Canada. Time for the takeaway, and more than just a pretty place. Tourism can often feel like a nice add-on to an economy, icing on the cake if the cake is the real industrial work. But as many a tourist-centered town knows, tourism is about bringing your customers to you and delivering goods and services to them on location. In other words, it's just as serious a business as any other, even if the pictures are prettier. Getting serious about the sector requires a multifaceted approach. There's the marketing at home and, importantly, in international markets where knowledge of Canada may be limited to a few stereotypes about snow and lakes. The breadth and complexity of this country is captivating for Canadians and international visitors, and showcasing that depth is always a good idea. Once we have the travelers in the country, the sector can be seen as one that's interwoven with many others. Our transportation systems will be under a lens, so making sure they function well and safely is critical. How clean and safe our cities are is another aspect of how we're perceived, and if that means it takes a visitor to force us to clean up our own house, so be it. The service in our hospitality sectors is the front line of this industry, so protecting the quality of work and the wages of those workers has to be considered a core element of a healthy tourism sector. And finally, maintaining a warm and welcoming culture to visitors is central to keeping them coming. All of these things will make Canada a better, more attractive place, not just for the occasional traveler, but for its citizens too. That makes the tourism sector one we can all get behind. My takeaway? People should want to come to this big, beautiful country of ours, but let's make the effort to keep Canada as attractive as possible once they've arrived. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.